Without the consent of the United Nations or the Syrian government, the US and some of its allies have been pounding Syria since September 2014. Routing the Daesh terror group was the US-led coalition's stated goal. Nearly 4 years on, aside from causing thousands of civilian deaths, the coalition's illegal presence is a contributing factor in the prolongation of Syria's conflict. Even a year after the defeat of Daesh by pro-Syrian government forces, the US keeps backing anti-Damascus militants while targeting the Syrian army positions. A UN report has now warned about the return of the Daesh terror group in parts of Syria under the control of US-backed militants. The US bellicosity has intensified since Donald Trump, once a critic of costly military interventions, took charge of the White House in January 2017.
In Trump's case, people are arguing over about whether or how he's going to change U.S. policy, right? Is he willing but unable? Then, he's impotent. Is he unwilling but able? Then he's a fraud and a liar. And if he's unwilling and unable, which I think is the truth, it really doesn't have anything to do with the president. If he's unwilling and unable to change the attack of U.S. policy, then why do we give a damn over what he says or thinks?
Statistics compiled by the Airways, a journalist-led watchdog of the coalition, showed airstrikes in Iraq and Syria grew by nearly 50% in 2017 compared with 2016. During last year's 5-month battle for Raqqa, US warplanes dropped some 20,000 bombs on the Syrian city. By the end of the campaign, the UN declared 80% of Raqqa uninhabitable. Meanwhile, the US says it has secured $300 million from its coalition partners to what it calls Syria's stabilization efforts. The sum isn't going to be spent on the reconstruction of entire Syria, but rather those areas under US control.
And any time the US speaks in an official capacity, you have to attach the word just the opposite of what they say. They say stabilize it. They mean destabilize. They mean continue to keep the Syrian government off balance by occupying and controlling sections of a sovereign nation's a national space.
This funding included $100 million from Saudi Arabia, a coalition member widely believed to be supporting anti-Syria terror groups. The State Department spokeswoman who made the funding announcement also said Washington would redirect $230 million that had been intended to help rebuild Syria to other foreign priorities. However, Heather Nauert made it clear that the US decision did not present a retreat by the country from Syria's conflict.
We're going to stay there and screw up as much stuff as we can and make it as difficult as possible. Funding proxy terrorists, claiming, forget the terrorists. This is a rogue state on its own occupying foreign soil without the consent of the sovereign government of that nation.
Back in March, President Donald Trump froze the $230 million threatening to pull American forces out of the war-ravaged country. He's been pushing the US coalition's allies to contribute more to the Syrian conflict financially. A country that's been devastated by indiscriminate US air raids now seems to have become a source of income for the administration of Trump, a billionaire businessman turned politician.